The myth is that charter schools are taking kids who cannot be educated and breaking the contract, longer day, all this kind of stuff is working miracles with them. The reality is, in my experience, the best students from the public schools in search of something better, having received 12 glossy, high-color brochures in their mailbox, go to places like Harlem Children's Zone, Harlem Success Academy, and it's the ones who have the most difficult time, the ones with learning disabilities, the ones who are English language learners who wind up right back in my classroom. So they win the lottery and then they lose it.
We've got to stop thinking of education as a monopoly provider and understand the importance of competition and choice.
Joel Klein, the former chancellor of New York City schools, has diverted over $400 million away from school-based budgets and wasted it on ineffective merit pay schemes and no-bid contracts. His policy decisions have led to increased class sizes throughout the city. He is responsible for closing approximately 100 community public schools, rather than provide them with needed resources. He has forced privately managed, hedge fund, and billionaire-backed charter schools within an increasing number of existing public school buildings, where they are forced to fight for their survival over students and space.
How is it possible that the DOE, responsible for our public schools, is taking no responsibility for it? How are they saying our schools are failing, but instead of investing in them, taking care of our most vulnerable kids, they're closing them down or squeezing them out?
We need to become the kind of people who are willing to break whatever rules we need to break, and we need to look beyond the way that the system has traditionally done something.
Michelle Rhee, the former chancellor of Washington, D.C. public schools, operated with a dictatorial style while pushing simple-minded reforms of carrots and sticks, such as merit pay and firing educators based upon faulty test data. She strove to silence her constituents much like she had done when in the classroom. She actually admits, and not shamefully, that she covered her students' mouths with tape to silence them. DC voters were so dissatisfied with her leadership that they did not re-elect the mayor in charge of her appointment.
These things are not innovative. What they are is they're terrorism, they're my way or the highway, and they're still not producing quote-unquote results.
You can say it's a business approach to schools to see this very top-down managerial style as it comes to schools. You can also see it as a direct attack on the mostly low-income and working-class people who schools serve, in that they don't have decision-making power. You don't see empowered parent-teacher associations or school leadership teams that are made up of teachers and parents supposed to be working together. We see those stripped of their power.
We've managed to really take the public out of public education, which has allowed the reformers to then take the education out of public education and replace it with this accountability game based on high-stakes testing and all kinds of phony measures that really don't measure the teaching and learning that real kids in real schools in real communities require.
The corporate reform model's narrow and limited approach does not offer real solutions for our public schools. Instead of depending on a business model to fix our schools, we need to invest in proven education reforms. The only two factors proven to positively impact student achievement are class size and teacher experience. Corporate reformers demand these for their children, but not for all children.
The current reform movement clearly is rooted in a free market ideology, a belief that with competition and less government oversight, schools will serve children better. The central focus of so-called reform is charter schools.
I think the best thing that happened to the education system in New Orleans was Hurricane Katrina.
Surely the citizens of New Orleans would state otherwise, and so would the collective consciousness of our nation.
Mr. Duncan's statement was born out of not a concern for the people of New Orleans or for public school children across the country. He made the claim because Hurricane Katrina paved the way for closing public schools and replacing them with charter schools. This is a faulty ideology that is cloaked in the language of the civil rights movement, but it actually flies in the face of all that movement represents.
Here's Mr. Duncan, the national leader of the public education system, aligning himself with these so-called education reformers. They are ignoring the real issues that face the country and the system of education.
Charter schools began as centers of innovation, where communities could come together, start a charter school, provide an alternative option for children who did not have high-quality options. But sadly, that movement has been hijacked.
Charters are now run by corporate interests. They're not run by parents, which was the original idea. They're not run by educators, which was the original idea. They're certainly not run by the community or community leaders, which was the original idea of charters.
It's money versus democracy. We have incredibly powerful, moneyed forces that are trying to privatize education to reduce the public costs, because most of them are paying for private schools for their own children, and they're not invested in the industry of public education.
There must be public accountability and public transparency in use of those funds, and there isn't in charter schools.
When this country was founded, the idea with democracy was that this is a government and a society it's for the people, it's by the people, it's of the people. And our public education system is supposed to be a big part of that. You know, everyone is guaranteed, regardless of race, of socioeconomic status, of family situation, of neighborhood, is guaranteed a free and quality public education. And I think what we see right now is actually that whole idea is being challenged with the charter school movement.
Charter schools do not serve the same student populations as public schools. They drastically underserve students with special needs. They under-enroll special education students who need small self-contained classes. They fail to serve equal numbers of English language learners. And they serve far fewer students who are living below the poverty line, as indicated by reduced and free lunch rates.
Charter schools shouldn't be looked at as a solution because they're not addressing the same needs as public schools are right now. Up until the forum is completely equal, where charter schools are taking ELL students, taking special education students with mandated IEPs, as well as the public schools, then we can actually compare numbers and see if that really is a solution.
I have one child who I applied to the Harlem Success Academy through the lottery process. When she was accepted through the lottery, I reached out to them before I attended any sort of a orientation to see if they would be able to accommodate her IEP. She has a 12 to 1-to-1 IEP for a year-round program with 4 different related services. They didn't respond to me through email at all. And finally, after the second meeting had come, I called them. I had a very difficult time getting through to them. Before I could even get the words 12 to 1-to-1 out of my mouth, they immediately told me that they would absolutely not be able to accommodate that sort of a child in their school.
Children with special needs, like 2 of my own, are not welcome. The doors are not open to these children. They are treated like garbage and dismissed at will with no accountability.
What the privatization model, though, does not do is provide a way for all students, all children, and all families, in all communities, to have access to a quality education. That is the promise of this country. And those of us who will defend it believe it is a civil right. As I've come to learn more about the privatization of education and the so-called new reform movement, it's become clear to me that this, in fact, is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
The truth is, charter schools are far less successful when compared with existing public schools than those with the drive to privatize would have the American public believe.
Stanford University's Center for Research on Education Outcomes conducted the most comprehensive study on charter schools to date. It compared half of the nation's charter schools to neighboring public schools. The study showed that 46% of charters performed equal to public schools, while 37% of charters actually performed worse. What some of the most prominent charter schools have learned to create is the illusion of student improvement. As the number of students in red at KIPSTAR go down, the proficiency rates in blue go up. When looking only at the blue line for proficiency, it would appear that KIPSTAR has led its students to make dramatic improvements. However, if you look closely at the red enrollment line, you can see that the school lost over 20 students between 5th and 8th grade. KIPSTAR is just one of many celebrated charter schools where we see the same stark pattern of attrition coincide with student improvement.
There's a whole phenomenon of students who win the lottery and then lose it because they are a special needs student or are more expensive or difficult to educate.
We can't even count the number of times that maybe in November, maybe in December, maybe a couple weeks right before testing time, that a new student will arrive at my door. A new student who maybe got pushed out, bumped out, encouraged to leave the charter school. PS30 opens its doors to every child. We're the #1 rated school in District 5, and you don't have to win a lottery to go to PS30. You have a right to put your child in this school. We go more and more towards charter. We're giving up the right to education, and we're handing it over to these private companies.
Having a son in a charter high school, his first freshman year, it was devastating to him in his educational career because charter schools have the habit of changing teachers and administrations almost every year. And in his situation, the principal was gone, the IEP team was gone, and a couple of teachers had just left in one school year. And he didn't get his services for almost a year and a half. The acting principal felt that the curriculum was the same and refused to give him his services.
Why is there so much money being invested in this system of charter schools? And why is it that no one can question it? There's no outlet. When I tried to talk to someone about what I was seeing and what I was feeling and the lack of progress, I couldn't seem to get any further than my own charter's CEO.
The charter parents do not have a voice. They didn't have anyone to advocate for them anymore. If they called the superintendent's office, sorry, we can't help you. If they called 311, sorry, we can't help you. They had to deal with their individual boards of education. And that's when I just realized that this is not a place for an empowered parent like myself.
I was in a public school that was fine. The worst that could be said about it is that it was average.
I made the decision initially to put my son in the charter school, coming from a private school. I saw their ad and I spoke to their recruiter, and I was made to believe that it would be a better place for him.
So I filled out all the paperwork and I went into prayer mode. Oh, it's lottery, but I'm going to call all the prayer warriors I know and I'm going to get my son in there and it's going to be good. Careful what you pray for. In his first week there, he was made to sit on the floor like this and told, despite the fact that there were cafeteria tables present, and they told him he had to earn the right to go on the floor where his classroom was. When he got on the floor, he was made to sit on the floor like this outside of the classroom, where he was told he had to earn the right to go in the classroom, and then it went on and on until he finally got to sit in a regular chair. He never told me. It was 3 months before I found out that that had happened.
Little by little, the school went from understanding and helping a child to a zero tolerance position, which discouraged a lot of children from learning. If you dropped the pencil, you were disruptive. If you shouted out an answer eagerly, being excited about a class, you were disrespectful.
You have a child who's curious, and you shut them down once, and they come back again with more curiosity, and now they're disrupting the class. You're disrupting my lesson, and if you don't stop, I'm going to have to remove you. What does that tell a child?
It really taught children to just sit and be quiet and be passive and not to take an active role in their learning.